I know I say it every week, whether it's a conversation with a guest or whether I'm just waxing poetic on some topic, but I am so excited to share today's conversation with you. This one in particular, I feel like has the power potentially to completely revolutionize your photography business. Noella Andres is the partnership manager at Imagen, and I am the very flattered, humbled, excited, proud newest brand ambassador for Imagen. Imagen is an AI culling and editing program for photographers. It works seamlessly with your Lightroom catalog to essentially learn your editing style and then reproduce that for you in very little more than the click of a button, regardless of, maybe today's shoot is outside in the bright sunshine and yesterday's shoot was indoors with artificial light. Over time, it will learn how you handle both of those scenarios, and it will be able to crank it out, whether it is Christmas morning, whether you have the flu, whether, you are in the midst of busy season and you just need a helping hand. This is not someone who relies on you for a paycheck. It is an entity that can handle the stuff that you don't want to do or have the time to do. And so it is the perfect kind of tool, as far as I'm concerned, to recommend any photographer add to their arsenal. Noella and I are going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. You may have already noticed that this show is longer than most of mine. And that's because this is a woman who has so much amazing knowledge. She has been in every side of the photography business. She's been a photographer. She's been a coach. She ran a marketing agency for photographers. And now, as I said, she is working with Imagen, so on one of the tech tools for photographers. And over the course of that time, she has had the opportunity to interface with so many photographers and see behind the scenes of so many businesses, what's working, what's not working. And what she has to share about that is so valuable for each and every one of us. So I'm going to shut up and let this conversation take the front stage.
Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how.
Noella, it is so wonderful to welcome you on to This Can't Be That Hard. How are you today?
I'm doing so good. The weather is beautiful where I live, which is a change. So I'm happy.
Well, good. It is. It's getting real warm here, and we are recording this the morning before my son graduates from high school, which is like mind blown. So big things afoot. Yeah, thank you. We're excited. I'm excited. It's emotional. It's, all the things. So today, this conversation is the last thing that we're doing before I close my computer and go back and get ready for our big weekend of graduation celebration stuff. And I would not have made this space in my calendar for just about anybody but you.
Oh, thank you.
We have had a lot of fun together in the brief period of time that we've gotten to hang out in real life. Noella and I finally crossed paths at Reset Conference this year and got to do some hanging out. And it just made me so excited for this connection and this partnership. And it really is one of the things, and I'll let you kind of jump in on this, but it's one of the things that I love the most about having any kind of platform. I like a lot of things about this phase of my career where I'm getting to work with all these different photographers, but I'm also getting to know the people behind the brands that I have used for a long time. And it has been in 90% of cases, such a wonderful thing. I feel like as photographers, we kind of get head down in our photography community, but the community of businesses that support us as photographers is just as robust and, is filled with passionate people at the same level. So it's really kind of
that's 100%. That's my favorite part about events is like that vendor room and getting to connect with like the people behind Honeybook and PicTime and like all these that I as a photographer have used for so many years. But I remember, do you remember the moment I saw you? I fangirled you. And then we took the selfie together. I still haven't seen that selfie, but I was like, oh my gosh.
Did we do that on my camera or on yours?
Yeah, it's on your phone.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to look that up right after we stop recording. And maybe if I can find it, I'll put it with this thing. I had some kind of, I don't know what was going on with the photos that I was taking when I was there. I have several selfies that were super blurry, so it may have been that. I know. It's like I get nervous. Oh my goodness. Well, good. Well, I am excited to dive in on what we're talking about today. You have so much experience in this industry from multiple perspectives, and I love what you bring to the conversation and the conversations that you and I have had about kind of the differences in each photographer's journey and the sort of the common threads with those photographers who are able to make it long term. And I feel like we've got a ton of stuff to cover today. So before we dive in, why don't you just go ahead and give everybody sort of the overview of who you are and how you came to be in the position that you're in.
So my name is Noella, and first I'm a mom, which I think is important. It's an important part of my story and why I kind of do what I do. I have 2 teenagers. I live in the Canadian prairies. I self-identify as a farmer / homesteader, which people are always surprised to find out. I have 17 chickens and they all have names. I know what they're all, I know every single one of their names. I spend all my summer in the garden. All my fall is spent making tomato sauce. I'm Italian, so that's like a thing.
Love it. Yep.
Serial entrepreneur, which I know a lot of people say, but I'm like, it's to my core. I actually, something you may not know and I don't talk about very often is I owned a gift shop and flower shop.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't talk about it very often, but I do. I owned a flower shop. I recently sold it last year. So I'm an Enneagram 7, which kind of explains the serial entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I was a wedding photographer. So I was a wedding and boudoir photographer. I closed my business. I say I retired from full-time shooting in about 2015, 2016-ish. At that time, still incredibly passionate about the industry, but and maybe you can, understand this, and I'm sure a lot of other people will resonate with this. As a mom, wedding photography was very hard, especially once my kids went to school. So what was going on was, I was shooting evenings and weekends, doing the consultations, which back then everything was in person. There was no virtual consultation. And my kids were walking in the doors. I was walking out. It wasn't super sustainable for me at that time. I'm still passionate about the industry. I pivoted and I started helping photographers in the back end of their business. So I started doing things like blogging and invoicing and social media. That turned into a full-blown agency. We helped dozens and dozens of photographers. So I got a really unique perspective of behind the scenes and what photographers were struggling with the most. Pivoted into coaching, still do coaching and consulting and strategy for photographers. That is something that I think I'll always do. I'm so passionate about that. In November, this feels like I'm rushing through my entire career, but in November, I joined Imagen, which is an AI culling and editing software. I joined as the partnership manager and have been in a blissful love relationship ever since.
That's amazing.
That's kind of everything wrapped up.
Yeah. Well, and I say that I've said this before on the show. I say it in conversations all the time with people about how, because although our paths have not very much in common in terms of like how we got to where we are, what they do have in common is the fact that it was like, I'm over here and now I'm over here and now I'm doing this thing. And I certainly felt as I was sort of moving through my career trajectory over time, that every time that I made a switch that felt huge, and then, all my friends and family were like, how's the such and such going? And I was like, actually, I'm doing this totally different thing now. Totally. And I always felt this sense of, I don't know, I don't want to call it shame, but almost like I had to make excuses for the fact that I was changing direction, whatever. But when I turn around now and look in hindsight at those various forks in the path, it makes sense. Like I can draw a line and say, these are the things that I'm good at that are, overlap with my interests and all this other stuff. And so, I do feel like in retrospect, as you sort of walk through that journey, that makes perfect sense to me. It makes sense with both just sort of in general, but then knowing you, I feel like it more than anything, you have been following a path that has served the things that were important to you in your life.
Yes, 100%. And and it's funny because I felt the same thing. Like there's this incredible shape. Like all my friends are like, "Oh, you're changing your career again, Noella?" Like
Right.
seriously? My parents.
Get it together.
Yeah, like love them, but conservative Italian. So
Sure.
and it wasn't until I had connected with a photographer based out of Paris who literally she's in her like late 50s, incredible fashion photographer, and she just was like, "No, I'm giving you permission to pivot. Like you can pivot as long, just like follow what your heart is telling you." And for me, my heart has always been incredibly passionate about photographers, helping women photographers in particular. I'm not gender typing, but that's like something that's super passionate for me, and helping photographers have more freedom in their life, which is what I did as a marketing agency, which is what I did as a coach. And now as a partnership manager with Imagen, it's just about freedom and giving, especially moms, more time with their loved ones,
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been on the same path. It's just kind of looked a little different every time.
Yeah. And the thing is, speaking of my son who's graduating, he and I have had a whole bunch of conversations as, now he's gotten accepted into college. So he's getting ready to move out. And there's all this pressure, on kids at this age to have some answer when someone asks them what they want to be. And I have said to him over and over again, if someone had told me this is what you're going to be doing when you're, now, because who knows what I'm going to be doing 10 years from now. But if somebody had told me that, I would have assumed that they like had connected the wrong name, like they had read the spreadsheet wrong or something. Like, no, that's not right. And also they wouldn't have been able to tell me that when I was graduating high school, because half of what I do now, like there was no word for podcast, like that wasn't a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So keeping an open mind and sort of being willing to pivot and adjust and change, I think, especially for those of us who consider ourselves to be drawn to the creative arts.
Yes.
It's important because that burnout is like it's a real thing. If you sit
what you're passionate about, you burn out.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay. But I digress because I really do want to dive into what we're planning on talking about today, which is the fact that these sort of many views on the photography industry that you have had over the years have given you some really important, I think, insights into what works and what those common threads are when it comes to successful long-term creative entrepreneurs. I'm gonna change it from photographers to creative entrepreneurs, but understanding that they're in there. Yeah.
I mean, I could go on forever, but yeah, there's a few pieces from all my experience working with different photographers, especially within the marketing agency. I saw a lot when I ran the marketing agency.
I'm sure.
And I think that there's always a few different bottlenecking areas that photographers would come across. They would get stuck on, and not just get stuck, but it would prevent them from growing.
Right.
So yeah,
I know that in the world, there's that phrase, like what got you here won't get you there. And when you say the word bottleneck, I think about times in my career where I have felt really bottlenecked. And oftentimes it is finding that sort of breakthrough thing where it's like, until I figure out how to break through this piece, I'm not going to be able to move forward. And for me, I feel like looking back on my photography career in particular, the first time that came into play was when I subscribed to my first CRM and set that up, which really like opened the door into the wild world of, or the wide world of systems. Yes. Would you say that?
That is like number one.
Okay.
That I was planning on saying. So, and I can say this because I was often the person that people outsourced tasks to, right? Like I was the one that was given the to-do list. What a difference a system could make.
Sure.
So I'm super passionate about systemizing everything, like everything, even if it's a 3-step process.
Yep.
And you mentioned, we were talking earlier and you mentioned Airtable, and I'm like, yes, give me all the Airtable. Like, let's just use the project management tools. So that's like number one, like project management tools, to help you systemize, but just documenting every single thing that you do in your business, not just documenting it, but knowing what it is so that as you're sitting down at your desk and you're like, hey, I got to do this, it prevents you from spiraling.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of us do when we sit at our desk if there is a lack of systems, right? So, and to go along with systems, and I don't want to skip ahead, but like the tools, like you said, like Airtable, CRM, things like that, figuring out the tools that you're going to use to create those systems. But, I've been outsourced so many times where they're like, hey, can you just help me with social media? And I'm like, okay, great. Like, where is your links? Where's your drive? And where do I find your images? Where's your passwords? There's just nothing. There's no systems often. And I think when you work for yourself, you don't think you need systems. You're like, I'll just do it. Like,
yeah.
Why do I need to document it?
Well, and the system lives in the soft gray part in between your ears, like
exactly,
which is fine for a short time where you can hold all of that and you don't have enough going on, or you don't have so much going on that you start to drop those pieces. But that part sneaks up really quickly in my experience.
100%. Like the second you get any kind of busy, So yeah, that's kind of like first and most important in my mind is any repetitive tasks that you're doing in your business, document it.
Yeah.
I recently found out, and I feel like I was living under a rock, but there's a program called Scribe, which someone just introduced me to. I don't know if you've heard about it, but
I've heard about it, but you're going to have to remind me what it does.
It basically, so you take your repetitive tasks and you basically hit like record, and it step by step outlines the things that you're doing with your mouse. So like if you're checking your email or you're like updating your website, it will record the steps and it writes it all out with screenshots.
Oh, wow. Nice. So it's creating those like standard operating procedures for you. Nice. Love that.
I know. So anyways, I was like mind blown when I found that program out. I've already used it so many times.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So just the other day I sat down, I have a virtual assistant. This poor woman watches so many videos of mine, I'm sure, because I make videos constantly. And they're just screen recording videos, and I'll talk while I'm doing something and say, okay, this is we have this project that I need help with. Here's the steps to do the project. And I'll just walk through the whole thing and talk as I go. And then I send that to her, and, she knows what links there are to tack it all together. And then she's able to do it. But I do think that in a small business environment like this, you're probably never going to get to the point where you are like, here, I have a marketing department and I don't really know what they do. They just do their magic. It's almost never going to grow beyond us being sort of the head of all of the parts of the business. But that doesn't mean that you have to do it over and over again. But you can't sort of offload it until you know what it is that you're doing, right?
100%. Like there were so many times when I had that agency where someone would hire me, they'd know exactly what they needed help with, but then the onboarding process we would get stalled at, and then they would get discouraged and be like, never mind, maybe I'm not ready to do this. But it was because they didn't have those systems documented, and they didn't have the bandwidth. You don't always have the bandwidth to like spend 2 weeks onboarding someone and showing them what to do and how you like things done. And that's why I just think it's so important to document as much as you can right from the very beginning, because you don't know where your business is going, and the more that you can get that out of the way. And that's the other thing too, is you can start outsourcing as a business owner, but you're not going to get the results you want unless you tell them how to get there. Right. Just saying, hey, can you plan my social media for a month? You're not going to end up with what you want. It's going to end up awful.
Right.
You have to have all that in place. And along with systems, I'm just going to like add in a little tidbit, like use something like LastPass for passwords, because there is nothing worse than getting the text message. Hey, what's the password for this? What's the password for this? Document that too.
Yeah. I'm on the 1Password side of things, but not for any reason other than that was the first one I thought of, or that I came across. But it blows my mind when I find those people out there who are not using a password manager. I mean, for all the things that we need passwords for, and for how disastrous it can be if you get hacked and all your passwords are the same. which you don't have any control over. Like somebody else gets hacked and then all of a sudden they have access to all your stuff. So yeah.
It literally is making my palms sweat.
I know.
I'm not using a password keeper. Even like if you're traveling, like okay, full disclosure, I did when we were at Reset Conference, I did have to call my husband and ask him to pull a password off my computer. So I'm maybe like guilty of this, but yeah, like I don't get it.
Yeah.
One.
Okay. So let's say that you are a newer photographer listening to this and you're hearing, okay, I need systems. I need, to start to document all of these things. But their thought is either, or maybe some combination of both. I don't even really know what my systems are. Like, I'm still figuring out how to manage all these different things. So how do I start to document that? Or when do I start to document that?
Personally, I think the second you do something more than like 10 times in your business, that's when you start. Like, because I think there's going to be a stage where you're not sure, you're testing things out, you're trying to figure things out. But I think, just like the repetitive, but not just like, I'm going to do it once or twice, but like the 10-ish times. And thankfully, a lot of the programs we use nowadays are so incredibly user friendly that it's almost like, well, do I really need to document that? Like Honeybook, for example, the next buttons are pretty, like, you can figure it out. You hit next. You don't really need to document it, but I still suggest documenting it.
Yeah. You've got your systems. That's the place to start. The next step after that is, once you're struggling to manage the systems all on your own, as long as they're well documented, you can outsource.
Yeah.
And I feel like probably a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are in that place. They are not brand new. They're in that sort of middle place where they've started to outsource a couple of things. They've started to learn some of these tools, and they're still doing a lot of the stuff, but they've got some help. What's next in sort of the journey?
You know what? I think it's important to note the things, again, that are bottlenecking you, the things that are preventing you from doing the things you should be doing in your business. So as a business owner, there's a lot of like overarching kind of like vision casting, working on the company that you should be doing. And often you can't do that because you're bottlenecked with the small, repetitive, mundane tasks that you're not necessarily 100% needed to do, as the owner. So I think figuring out, making a list of the things that you like, maybe you wake up in the morning, and you're like, oh, I have to plan social media. It's like the things that you're dreading doing. Make a list of those things. And there's kind of two ways that you can go about or outsourcing. One of them is finding people that are really good at one or two things. So you can find a copywriter, you can find a graphic designer, you can find, a admin type VA. So that is one route that you can go, is identifying the tasks that are bottlenecking you and then finding people that are specialized in helping you in those areas. The other way you can do it is just find someone and train them on every aspect of your business. And I know you have someone who's incredible, and that is kind of what I did a lot in my marketing agency. Was we would assign one of my team members to a photographer, and they just like knew that business in and out. And so that's kind of two ways you can go about outsourcing. What do you think? How do you think most people start when they outsource? Do you think that they hire like a general person, or do they kind of dig into like the more specialty? Like, I'm always curious what other people think.
I'm going to say I think that a lot of photographers very quickly offload their bookkeeping and, that stuff, because in their mind, that's a totally different job.
Yeah.
And so they don't feel ownership over it. But what I see, and actually really what I did, was believing for way too long. And I look at my own situation and I'm like, that was your ego. Believing that like no one was going to do what I did as well as I did it. And so I held on to things for longer than I should have. And it really wasn't until in my business, I was like back against the wall. It's either do or die. Like, you've got to get help, which lots of people who listen to this podcast know kind of coincided with me getting divorced, which actually everything in my life turned into this situation where I was back against the wall and I needed help. And I had been an independent person and still consider myself to be a pretty independent person. But I learned in that season of my life the value of allowing other people to to step in and the necessity of that at certain times. And when it came to my business, because it was this unplanned kind of back against the wall situation, it was very messy. So I had a lot of sort of failed starts where I was trying to get help, but I didn't know how to help the person who was trying to help me. And, so there was a lot of anxiety around that. And then also this sense of like, see, I was right. This isn't working out. In retrospect, I can see that was very much, I mean, maybe some of those situations wouldn't have worked out anyway, but like in a lot of cases, it was just because I came to it sort of all over the place. And they're like, well, how can I help you? I don't know.
And do you think that systems, if you had SOPs and systems and like your brand boards and like all that kind of stuff in place, would it have helped?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and I think about I don't want to say the irony when I sit here in this, seat in my recording studio, like talking to people on the podcast. And certainly when I then meet people in real life and they're like, oh, I listen to your podcast and it's helped me so much. There has not been a single instance where I have been like, oh, great. Every single time it's like I don't want to say a gut punch in a bad way. Like it's a gut punch in a good way, because honestly, there's parts of me that like can't believe that I'm in that position because I feel like I did it so imperfectly, like the whole journey. And so again, when you're listening to us talk about systems and SOPs and at least from my perspective, please understand that did not come naturally. It wasn't straightforward. It was not perfect, but I still got there and have learned all kinds of lessons along the way. So if that can be,
a lot of educators are the same, even
yeah.
me. I can stand here and say, yeah, like get your systems in place, guys. But I think we come at it from a place of like, we learned a lesson, and like like all of our businesses are messy and we're like, yeah, this is how we could have been a little bit better. But I think we all came from that place,
Yeah.
I think people underestimate the amount of time that is required to properly onboard a team member and have them in your business.
Yeah.
They actually have to like block time off. In the beginning, it's going to take you more time than it's going to save you.
Yeah.
And I think coming at it from that perspective, I think people automatically think, well, if I hire someone, I'm going to be free, like it's going to take so much off my plate. It's not an immediate,
right.
That's not an immediate satisfaction that happens by any means. You need to have the time to invest into them.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where I waited until I needed someone. And then my anticipation was somehow that like my magic business fairy godmother was going to show up and just be able to like seamlessly integrate and do all the things. And of course, that's not the way that worked or can work. And so I do think that giving yourself, if you anticipate that time is coming 6 months or a year from now, then like now is the time to start in baby steps.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like the amount of times that I was hired and they weren't ready, like I think often you have to really be ready to invest in hiring and outsourcing someone. But systems, SOPs, and outsourcing, huge impact on your business. And my favorite topic is talking about the tools that you're using in your business, right? And the tools that are helping you save time in your business, take the load off, prevent that burnout.
Tools are, to my mind, kind of the perfect in-between point between like fully outsourcing and paying people to do all the things, because that gets really expensive really quickly. But there are better and better tools all the time out there for all of the things, whether it's managing your passwords or...
Yeah, we're in just such a good time of owning a business. Like all the technology advancements that are happening around us, like we have it so good now. Like had I known about all these tools back when I was a wedding photographer, like there's no way, like I would still be a full-time wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Like I quit, I retired, I quit, whatever, from wedding photography because I burned out big time. Like and some wedding photographers that are listening to this won't quite even understand what it was like 10 years ago when you had to manually do pretty much everything. Like I don't recall programs like ClickUp or Descript or, I don't even know if Loom was around.
Okay. So talk to me about your favorites.
I'm gonna start with HoneyBook because we already talked about that, and I adore HoneyBook. I can't. So again, when I was doing this, I was creating Word documents for invoices.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
like the amount of work that went into just invoicing was insane. So HoneyBook is one of my absolute favorites. I especially now they're lead forms. I'm a HoneyBook educator. Do you use HoneyBook? What do you?
I don't. I use Dubsado,
Okay,
but
cool.
I certainly understand the overlap and have lots of friends who love HoneyBook. And I am a huge advocate of whatever CRM
Any
works
CRM,
for
like
you.
there's Aave, there's 17 Hats. They're
Yeah,
all I've used almost all of them because with my business, right?
sure. Yeah.
So a very good CRM, I think, is number one important because that's like I think often actually invoicing is one of the things that people are nervous to outsource, right? Like there's lots of money that can be exchanged, financial information, things like that. So I think having a really solid CRM and building that out properly from the beginning. So
Yeah.
not like, having the workflows and having designing your invoice, things like that. That's all super important. My other favorite program, and I know that you're involved in this one as well, is PickTime.
Mm-hmm.
Delivering images in a beautiful way. Again, I used to do Dropbox, and I'm like, oh man, even just like the passive income that can come from the sales from PickTime is amazing. It can pay for itself. And then lastly, which is something I'm super passionate about, is Imagen. Yeah, it's an AI culling and editing software. My favorite part about Imagen, though, and is the backup part, because for me, like I said, I had that severe anxiety as a wedding photographer with like losing images. So I love that part too about Imagen.
Amazing. Well, I love Imagen too. This has been a long time coming, me partnering with an AI tool for culling and editing. And I dragged my feet on it for a long time because for a long time, once I decided that editing was something that I no longer had the time to do myself, I found a human who I hired on Upwork, one of these online places. And I have been working with her for years. A lot of people know this story. She is based in the Ukraine. She's had to move her family several times. Like, I just would never fire her. Even though I've never met her in person, I feel like I've been working with her for 8 years. Mm-hmm. However, people would ask me, I would say, you need to, you've got at the beginning stage of your client journey, that CRM is indispensable. It's going to manage your contracts. It's going to manage your invoicing, your email communication back and forth, your to-do list, like all of those things are in your CRM. Yeah. And then I have been forever a huge advocate of PickTime, like one of the most incredible, I think the most incredible way to deliver photos in a beautiful way and make the most possible sales on those photos, because they are structured so well with all of their various marketing tools. But that left that gap in the middle where I was saying, I have an editor who I love, and she is one human being that I can't clone and hand out to people. She doesn't have she's not taking clients anymore, and hasn't for a while. And so I've always said, go find yourself an editor. And then when AI editing started to come onto the scene, I was super excited because I knew that was going to be a much more budget-friendly way for people to start to outsource their editing or take the bulk of their editing work away. But it took me a while to find one. And of course, it's like tricky for me to trial it, since I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot this one, and this time I'm going to try this new tool. And there's a learning curve and it's time involved and whatever. But when I found Imagen, I was like, yep, this is not only the tool that I love, but it's also the company and the people that I want to partner with. And so I'm really excited to start this kind of collaboration, just because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are suffering with the time that it takes them to get their images finished. And whether you feel like you need to put your fingers on each deliverable photo, or if you're like, I just want to get it off my plate altogether, AI can get you so far, so much of the way there. Your tool is incredible for the way that it can, the thing that's cool about AI editing as opposed to like presets, is that because it is learning and because it has the sort of intelligence piece to it, it's able to look at each individual photo and understand, like, the lighting scenario here is different. the color casts here are different. So this is what we're looking for as the final output, but this image needs different things in order to get to that place,
Yes,
which is
exactly.
amazing.
It like really hones in on consistency, which
Right.
is not something that just a normal preset will give you. If you were to apply a normal preset on like an underexposed image versus an overexposed, it's going to apply the same settings on
Exactly.
right. So the AI editing does a really great job of doing it consistently. And and it's now that I'm thinking about it, all three of these things that we talked about, CRM, the gallery delivery, and the editing, all three of those not only save you time, but they help you create an amazing client experience, right?
Yep.
You're delivering your images faster, you're delivering it in a beautiful way. You're not, again, when I was a wedding photographer, I would print out a contract
Uh-huh.
and have them sign it. So I'm like, just think about the elevated client experience that you're
Yeah.
getting now. But yeah, AI, I think a lot of photographers, maybe not so much like today, but maybe like a year ago, was super nervous. We're all really nervous to adapt to AI. I remember when ChatGPT came out, I was like, I am not using that. And now I live on
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that, people initially think of when they think of a program like Imagen is like, oh, AI, like it's scary. But realistically, so speaking about Imagen in particular, the way that you get started with Imagen is you're uploading your already edited images. So first of all, it's personalized to you. You're not going to get just like a blanket edit style. It's not going to change the way you edit. It's not going to change the way your galleries look in the end. You are really using your personal style to edit your images. You also have full control over the editing process. So once we apply your edits, you can still go in and review it and make adjustments. You can adjust your profile, you can adjust your images. So again, not only are you like, you're a little hesitant to start AI to begin with, but the nice thing is you still have full control over this process.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not unlike documenting a process and turning it into a system. It's not unlike onboarding someone who you're outsourcing work to. Yeah. When you start with a new tool like Imagen, you have to build in a period of time where the workload actually gets a little bit heavier. Yeah. So it's not going to just take it out of your hands. You have to go in, you have to train it, do the work. It does tend to be to learn faster and be more consistent than sometimes people are when it comes to outsourcing work. But on the other hand, and it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the same pay rate the whole time. Very, very reasonable pay rate. Like you said,
it is a little, just like anything else. When you outsource work, it does take that bit of time in the beginning. So with Imagen, you have a few different ways you can get started with the program, but one of them is to upload your already edited images into the program, which builds a personalized profile for you. That does require going through your already edited images, right? Mm-hmm. Picking your favorite edits, picking, the shoots that you're just like, you adore and you're like, that is the style I want to replicate. So you do have to put that legwork in the very beginning. However, if, for example, you have a session tomorrow and you're like, I just want to give this a try immediately, we do have the option. You can just upload a preset into the program and that will kick off your profile. So it does require that time up front, but there are shortcuts on getting started really quickly and really easily, which is nice. But no matter how you get started, that's the benefit of it, is it does spit out your edited images very quickly and consistently.
Yeah. And over the course of so you upload a gallery, it comes back with edits. And my understanding is that you can then adjust those edits and sort of re-upload it. So it is exactly like working with a human editor in that way, where you're saying, okay, good job. Here are my notes. Yeah. This is what I would have done differently.
Yeah. So that's it. And then you upload them back into our system and it trains that profile based on those adjustments that you just made. So the more and more you use it, the more and more it gets better. Like, we have a ton of photographers that they just like hit the button and walk away. And that's it, because they've spent that time not only building their profile, but constructively criticism, they like, hey, I like this, but can we adjust this a smidge?
Yeah.
And so you can do that in Lightroom and then re-upload it back into the program. or you can actually just go directly to your profile and adjust it. So if you're like, I want to overall adjust my profile and make it a little bit more brighter, you can just adjust your entire profile in general.
Amazing. Well, I think that this is when this show drops is the perfect time for anyone out there who's listening who has not dabbled in the AI editing process yet. Now is a great time to start. Most of us are in sort of a period of some semi slowness, depends on where you are, but set it up, take the time, commit a few days, 1 week to like culling through and getting some images to upload and let the system digest them. And then your next few sessions or your next wedding or whatever, give it a go, but commit to yourself that you're going to go through the process. And when you make whatever adjustments to the edits that you make, re-upload, do that training process, because by the time the busy season hits, what you will have is on-demand editing that you can use as much or as little as you want. The other nice thing, and we didn't even talk about this, when you hire a person, there is this sense of responsibility where that person is depending on you to give them the amount of work that you've promised to give them. So a lot of people will hesitate to hire a VA or anything like that because they say, well, it's busy right now, but in 2 months, I'm not going to have any work at all for them.
Especially because a lot of them require like retainers, right? Like 20 hours a month or,
right.
Yeah.
Whereas the way that Imagen's payment process is structured, you're not committed to anything. You're paying when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And that's kind of like I'm telling everyone right now, like get started now, build your profile now. Your October self is going to
thank you. Exactly. So good.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing I want to talk about again is like the backup storage. So I don't know if a lot of people know this. It's not something that it's not as fancy as the culling and the editing feature, which is like probably everybody's favorite, but the backup storage. So any sessions that you run through Imagen, you have the option of backing up to our system. So your images are like 100% secure. And I guess maybe it's just me, but like when I was a wedding photographer, that kept me up at night.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yes, there's finally a solution for that. And it happens like very seamlessly. Like AI technology is happening so fast. And that's kind of how I felt like when I was offered the job at Imagen. I was like, I got to be on the boat, because if I'm not on the boat, I'm off the boat. Like I'm being left behind.
Absolutely. And that standard of being able to turn photos around in a shorter period of time and being able to know that you're not going to, I'm going to bring it back kind of to the beginning of our conversation, which is that like we build these businesses with the idea that we're going to be able to set our own hours and do all this stuff. And then very quickly we get roped into, because we are doing all of the things, especially if you happen to be at that place where you haven't really gotten into systems or haven't really gotten into outsourcing, we get into a place where there are so many little things that we are doing each and every day that like it can totally overthrow that whole point. I mean, if you have ever said to yourself, I wish I could just clock in and then clock out, like that's where you are. Yeah, I've said it too, for sure. But I really do. I'm excited. Again, like I am honored that you guys were interested in partnering with me. I am really excited for this partnership because I don't have many partnerships. The ones that I do are the tools that I really deeply believe are going to make a giant impact, not only in the businesses of photographers, but also just in their lives and in what they're able to deliver to their clients. And so thank you. Thank you.
Yes. No. Oh, I mean, we love you. I mean, as you know, we've loved you for a long time. And anyways, yeah. And that's like, I was fangirling because your name was you're just such a big voice in the industry and help so many people. So when I saw you, I was just like, oh my
gosh. Oh, so sweet. Amazing. Okay. So if people want to try out Imagen, I do have a link. I've actually got a whole page of my website devoted to it. So you can go to thiscan'tbethathard.com/Imagen. And then what's the process from there?
They're going to click on your link. They are going to get 1,500 free edits that they can play around in. Those 1,500 free edits are only, they count towards just what you're editing and what you're exporting. So first of all, I would suggest people click on your link, install the program, and start building their profile. And then use those 1,500 free edits once they're ready to try it out. And That's it. That's it. Just
Amazing.
get started. Just get started building the profile. Obviously, Imagen has an amazing customer support team. People can email me, and I'm more than happy to help them. But I think just taking the first step and building their profile is number one.
Amazing. And then I am going to redirect to you because I feel like your sort of voice of calm and reason is a thing that this industry needs more of. And I imagine lots of people out there listening might want to connect directly with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
You know what? I kind of like the secret ninja that I don't like. I don't love talking about myself too much, but so I actually just took my website down last week, which I'm kind of sad about. I might put it back up. But anyways, Noella Andres on Instagram. And if anyone has any questions, even about like Imagen or business coaching or anything like that, they can email me, noella.a@imagen.ai.com. That was a mouthful.
Well, that's okay because we'll link it in the show notes, so it'll all be there. Amazing. Well, Noella, thank you so much for all of this, and I will be talking to you very soon again.
We will. Okay. See you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, you can find more information about this episode, along with all the relevant links, notes, and downloads at thiscan'tbethathard.com/learn. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Even better, share the love by leaving a review in iTunes. And as always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.